Welcome to Escape Purgatory, a podcast where we rewatch Supernatural, then talk it through in the hopes that we can finally escape this show.
Join us each week, leave comments on upcoming episodes, and together we can escape Supernatural Purgatory. Hi!
Hey! Well, we're back this week, and we are talking about Season 4, Episode 3, In the Beginning.
Ooh.
I don't know. I have thoughts, I have feelings about this episode. It didn't hold my attention at all.
There's something about this. It's like, the thing is, it's an episode that established a lot of canon details that are kind of just taken as canon details now and have been for years, and kind of seeing them being established wasn't as interesting as I remember it being.
Yeah, that's exactly how I was thinking about it after the fact. I was like, oh, I know why I don't find this interesting. It's because I already know all of this stuff.
Yeah. I think if this had been the first time that we'd watched this episode, we would have been like, oh my god, this is like, this is a revelation. Like, Mary's a hunter. And it's like, oh yeah, of course she is.
Yeah.
I think that's the problem. I think this one doesn't hold up as well in a rewatch because there's a few contradictions with stuff that's established later on. So it kind of like jars your brain. You're like, why? What? And although this is a very Dean-heavy episode, it's not really about him either.
He's just a vehicle. This is my fear with the prequel, is that this is what it's going to be like, where it doesn't really hold your attention. Like, I can't imagine them doing more than one season of the Winchesters.
Yeah, I'm not sure how... I don't know what the story's going to be. That's the thing that, like... Because I want to see what they do with it. Like, I want to watch it, I want to see what they do with it. But I can't, in my brain, come up with a plot for it.
No, because... I mean, in this episode, it's established that John was never a hunter, and that it was Mary that was a hunter. But the show is called The Winchester, so it's got to be either: are we going to be like Men of Letters, Winchester Legacy? Or are we going to be Campbell Hunter Legacy? Like, but we know it's about Mary and John. It's just like, well, they didn't hunt together at any point, so she wanted out.
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
Yeah, I think you're right about the prequel vibes from this, because I was thinking about it too when I was watching this. Because you're right, because it's called The Winchesters. The prequel's going to pick up where this episode left off, right? That would kind of make sense. You know, what's going to happen other than like 10 years of domesticity and having kids?
Exactly. It's like, it doesn't really, but we know that's not what the story's going to be.
Yeah. It must evolve somehow around Mary trying to get out of the life, and maybe like it would be really fun if it was almost like a I Dream of Jeannie Bewitched situation where she was trying to like hide the fact that she's a hunter from John with like comedic effect. I would watch that actually.
Yeah, I mean, if they did like a completely, not 180, but like a genre flip.
Yeah.
This is going to be supernatural related, so I don't think they can do comedy, but I don't think they can do consistent comedy.
I think it's going to be dark, and I think it's going to be gritty, or I don't know. I'm not sure. I guess we'll find out.
We certainly will find out. So this episode was written by Jeremy Carver and directed by Stephen Boyum. There was a commentary on this episode with Kripke and Jeremy. It was okay. There were moments in it that Kripke brought up that this would be like Carver's prequel series, and I was like, ha ha ha, if only you knew. And then one of the last things when Cass comes back into this episode, and it's not really a spoiler because you should have watched it by now. Yeah. But at the end of the episode when he comes in, Jeremy refers to Misha as like a hottie with body.
I love that.
And like a tall drink of water. It's like, everybody is thirsty for Misha.
Including Jeremy Carver.
They talked about like a little bit about how they view time travel in this episode.
Right.
Kripke described it as a closed loop. Like he thought it was like this was always going to happen.
Oh.
That Dean always comes back to the past and triggers all the events and stuff. He did make a funny comment actually about this. He says, Robert Singer says, "You have no problem with demons, but you're concerned about this." Like the logic behind time travel.
Well, I was asking the same thing because I often think about this in time travel. I watch too much Doctor Who. But did Dean cause this then? Because...
that's the way I read it.
Right? I did too. But at the end of this episode, he seems upset, but not upset to the point we normally see Dean get when he blames himself for something.
Right, but this is also a Karma episode where Dean's emotional intelligence is pretty stunted.
That's true, actually. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. You're right. Because, yeah, what we're saying then, if it is a closed time loop, if Cass hadn't sent Dean back in time and he got involved, then maybe this wasn't going to happen. But then I would say Cass makes a little reference at the end of it. It's always going to be this way. Mm-hmm. So even if Dean hadn't gone back, maybe it still would have played out just slightly differently.
Yeah. So we start with the recap, and it's back to the pilot, looking back at like how Mary died. There's a little bit of end of season 2. Mm-hmm. We cut to Dean, and he's asleep, being adorable. And we see Sam exit the episode. That's how they described it on the commentary, that he really does just sort of exit the episode. He goes out the room and he approaches a car that has Ruby in it, and that's it. That's all we see of Sam in this episode. Yeah,
which it really feels like the first time they've ever done that, where they've just, one of them's gone and you don't know where they've gone or what's going on, and that's it. That's all you see of them. So I guess if you were watching this the first time, you would maybe feel Sam's absence in this episode a lot more. I mean, Dean mentions him a few times in this as well, so you kind of are brought back to like, oh yeah, where is Sam? And you do kind of think about it. I mean, his absence is a whole plot point for this episode too. Like,
yeah.
You know,
yeah,
so it I kind of like that he's not in it at all.
He only has one line in this entire episode, and it's one word.
I hope he got paid the full amount for this episode. Good on you, Jared.
Probably did. Apparently he was in Hawaii during the filming of this episode.
Okay. Was that also in the commentary?
Yeah, it was. There was speculation that he was doing reshoots for Friday the 13th, but he said no, he was in Hawaii.
Oh, wow. That's pretty good. That's a nice little vacation.
And so we're back in the motel room, and Dean's dreaming about hell, basically.
Yeah.
And then he does the like shock awake thing, and Cass is being weird. And he's just sat on the bed.
I love him so much.
Hello, Dean. What were you dreaming about?
You get your freak on by watching other people sleep. What do you want?
Listen to me. You have to stop it.
Stop what?
This is the beginning of like social awkwardness, Cass.
Yeah, he's just, there's something about him in this episode as well. I just need to like gush about Cass at the moment and Misha. I really love early seasons Cass. Like, there's something so robotic about him. Mm-hmm. Like, he is fully on mission. He doesn't seem to care about them at all. Like, he doesn't care about Dean at all at the moment, apart from one moment in this episode where I think that kind of veneer of robotic angel soldier kind of breaks down a little bit. But yeah, I'll talk about that later. But I love him in this. There's another shot later on where he's just staring straight ahead while he's talking to Dean, like he's off in the distance, and it's just like, it's just so alien. I love.
Yeah.
No. There's many comparisons to be made here between, and I have a whole essay to write on this. I need to make some posts on it at some point with comparison gifs and things. I think you can read a lot of Spock in Cass.
Yeah.
And I feel like some of their very early interactions are very reminiscent of like Kirk and Spock from the like original series, very much not understanding each other at times. Mm-hmm. But yet there's that potential for like this great friendship between them, and it just makes it so good. Anyway, that's it. That's my gush about Cass for most of this episode.
I think it's interesting as well that, you know, going back to like the roboticness and like he's very cryptic in this episode. Mm-hmm. Very, very cryptic. Literally, the line he says to him before all this sort of sets in motion is, "Listen to me, you have to stop it," and that's it.
Yeah.
And like, That's all the instruction he has is you have to stop it. And like, it's funny how that becomes like two meanings, especially at the end of this episode. Like,
Yes.
it's not just about what's happening in this episode, but what's going to happen in the to be continued.
Yeah. Why have you got to be so cryptic, Cass? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I have...
You're not on a word limit. You can speak.
There's something Cass says about time being fluid. Mm-hmm. And I wonder how much Cass, before he's used to being on Earth and being in a body, experiences time as fluid. So maybe it's like, you have to stop it, but not necessarily this thing that I'm about to shoot you into, that you're experiencing as linear time, but something that's happening in the future. And it might make perfect sense to him because he's an angel and he's seeing time in a different way. Mm-hmm. But it comes across to Dean as just like incomprehensible.
No, I like that. I actually like that a lot. So then we see Dean like again shock awake, and he's on a bench, and he has the jacket.
Mm-hmm. Look, I know I said I didn't like this episode, but the inclusion of the jacket in this episode was an absolute stroke of genius on Jeremy Carver's part if he wrote that in, because it's everything, man.
It is, and like, okay, right. But how much is John basing Dean on this Dean? I don't want to get into that. I don't want to get too much into that because we'll be here in like for circles for days. But at the same time, I don't think John really liked this Dean.
I mean, yeah, the fact that he's wearing his father's jacket in this episode is something that is near and dear to my heart, and I hate it and I love it at the same time.
It's like, when did John see that jacket and was like, hey, that's a cool jacket, maybe I need to find one like that, and then he went and found one.
Yeah, it's interesting here that like John has minimal interaction with Dean in this episode. The thing is, like, I think people would argue that like, oh, maybe he should have remembered who he was, and then later on like looked at Dean as a grown man and be like, wait a minute,
yeah.
But there have been very significant events in my life. I don't feel like any of these events are very significant to John. There's maybe one. I wouldn't recall the people who were there if they weren't like members of my family that I already knew.
Yeah, and like really the interaction is just like a weird guy in a cafe. Like, that's really it. He just died though.
So maybe I don't know, maybe it messes with his memories in some way.
I don't know. It's a weird one.
Yeah.
But yeah, so a police officer basically nudges Dean, says, you can't sleep here. You just have to go somewhere else. Dean opens his phone and he has no signal. Mm-hmm. And he like looks across the way and sees a diner. And as he gets up, there's this like Tab commercial on the back of the bench, which I don't know if you know what Tab is.
I think Tab was still a drink in the UK in the 80s, but yeah.
Basically. Dean is definitely giving off like, oh, I'm very, very drunk vibes. Because he's like disoriented. He doesn't really know where he is. And he's talking to John. Mm-hmm. But he doesn't know it's John.
Because like the thing is, like, we're watching this is like, I know it's John and you know it's John, but Dean doesn't know it's John.
No, not at all. And like when you're first watching this, you don't know it's John,
right? But they're like, hey, it's Matt Cohen.
Yeah, exactly. So Dean's trying to establish where he is. John orders him a coffee, which I think is kind of great because it's probably like 5 cents.
Yeah, I know.
It's like super, super cheap. Which everything on Dean should have stood out like really badly. Like, yeah. I'm sure even the money would have been slightly different. And so he asks, where can I get reception for this phone? And I love that they made a Star Trek reference.
Yeah.
Can you tell me where I can get reception on this thing?
USS Enterprise?
Which is funny because it's a flip phone. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly.
It does look like a lot like a communicator.
And then we see the guy who's like serving at the diner, and he looks like very much crazy hippie gear. Mm-hmm. Dean makes a future reference of Sonny and Cher breaking up. Dean's like looking around and notices a newspaper, and it says April 30th, 1973. Mm-hmm. So he has been sent back in time 30 years.
Going back
over 30 years.
There were a few Back to the Future jokes in here, but I feel like there could have been more.
Yes, definitely.
Like there is one here when the guy walks in and says, "Hey, Winchester," and then they both turn around. I think if maybe it hadn't been as traumatic, like with his parents being involved, Dean would have made more Back to the Future jokes.
Oh yeah, yeah. Like his brain is definitely like backfired on this one.
Yeah.
And so we then learn that the guy he sat next to is John Winchester, and the look that he gives of like utter disbelief.
Yeah.
Is amazing. He's just staring at him. You would though, like if you went back in time and saw your parents and they didn't know who you were, I would definitely just be like, what?
The thing is as well, like Dean doesn't know what John looked like as a young man because they don't have all their photos from their childhood because they all got burnt in the fire. And so he's got no frame of reference. Like he didn't grow up with pictures of his younger parents. Like I kind of know what my mum looked like when she was my age. Because I have photos, but Dean doesn't have this for John, so he is literally sitting next to a stranger that's like, "Oh right, yeah, that's my dad." I don't believe for one moment this John Winchester is 19 years old.
Yeah, neither do I. Apparently, he's 19.
This is the whole like casting people in their 30s as teenagers kind of thing. You know, it's fine. Mary doesn't look 19 either. I think that's supposed to be.
She would be
age.
younger than that.
So like 18.
Yeah.
Yeah.
John leaves the diner and says, take it easy. Dean's still being in so much shock, just is like, yeah, okay.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what I'd do if I've met my parents from the past.
No, I'm not messing with time.
Yeah, if I touch them, like, we might cause some kind of paradox.
Yeah.
That's true. See, I always just think, like, time police is going to show up. It's like the Star Trek time police. Just such party poopers. They're not even called the time police, but every time they appear in an episode, I'm like, God damn, it's the time police.
That's too funny.
So Dean, of course, tails John, but as he turns a corner, Cass is there. I really like the way Cass appears and just disappears in this episode. It's like, I have something to tell you. I've told you the thing. Goodbye.
Yeah, exactly.
Dean asks him what he's doing. Cass says that everything that's happening is real, so he is alluding here that Dean is affecting time. Oh, Dean does make another Back to the Future reference here, so that's two.
Okay, so what? Angels got their hands on some DeLoreans? How did I get here?
Time is fluid, Dean. It's not easy, but we can bend it on occasion.
We'll bend it back. Or tell me what the hell I'm doing here.
I told you. You have to stop it.
I like that Cass is just like, clearly that's incomprehensible to him, so just chooses to ignore it.
Yeah. We already know he doesn't understand references.
Right. I do think this sometimes, because if you didn't understand pop culture, a lot of the conversations that you would have with Dean would be incomprehensible.
Yes.
Like, just looking at him like he's just saying words. Like, his face is saying that he's not happy about it, but he's just saying words. So Cass just chooses to ignore him and be like, well, time is fluid, Dean. Like, in this episode, we get the idea that only angels are powerful enough to do this kind of time travel. Cass repeats what he says as well at the beginning of the episode, which is like, I told you have to stop it. And then Cass disappears when Dean tries asking more information about that.
Yeah. I love that he says, are you allergic to straight answers? Because it really is. It's like, I have to say, like, the way that, as much as I love this, I also really hated it, because it is really frustrating that it's just like, it almost seems unnecessary to be so cryptic.
It's like Cass is being intentionally frustrating.
Yeah. And
kind of almost agitating him. And I think at the end of this episode, we need to talk about what was the point of this, actually. Mm-hmm. Because, yeah, I have feelings about it. So we see John, and he's talking to a car salesman at Rainbow Motors car dealership. I love that. You know, he's kind of negotiating, and he's managed to get the price down on this like VW camper van, and so the salesman goes back in to get the paperwork. I'm guessing Dean oversees this and just like can't let it happen.
Of course not.
He's having like flash forwards in time to him and Sam like sleeping in a camper van.
He's like, I cannot let this happen.
It can't be it. Does it even have a tape deck? You know, Dean's kind of leaning against the Impala like, hey, come over here.
Mm-hmm. I was like, oh, look, it's the lean that I have on my tattoo.
It's true, yeah. Proper, like, pimping out that car.
Yeah.
John kind of questions him and say, like, you following me? And Dean's like, no, I'm just here for my coincidence. Says he's going to thank him for that cup of coffee by basically telling you to buy this car. Buy this car. This specific car.
This is the car you want.
Oh, yeah? You know something about cars?
Yeah. Yeah, my dad taught me everything I know. And this is a great car.
When I was getting my tattoo, there was a car auction that was going on.
Yeah.
And there was a 62 Impala convertible that was on auction.
Yeah.
And it sold for over $100,000. And I was like, John doesn't have over... And then I was like, oh no, this is 1970. That car probably cost like, I don't know,
peanuts.
$500.
Yeah. Right. What an investment. I mean, I would say Impalas weren't worth that much until Supernatural was on air, so they definitely jacked the prices of those cars.
Mm-hmm.
So
I mean, this convertible that was on auction was like it was shiny black. It was gorgeous. And if I had that kind of cash lying around, I would have loved to have gotten it. But anyway.
I mean, we all want classic cars, Annabelle. One day when we win that lottery. John kind of questions him, but more like, why? What do you know about cars? And Dean's like, well, my dad taught me everything I know, which was quite a sweet moment, I guess. I like the way he opens the hood and you kind of see them looking in it together and they discuss the car specs and stuff. Mm-hmm. I feel like this is probably one of the things that Dean did enjoy doing with John when Dean was younger and John was older. Time travel, eh? I like the way that Dean manages to convince him pretty easily to buy this car.
Which in my mind says that John was already looking at that car.
Yeah.
I was like, I know I told Mary that I'd get her this one, but I kind of want this.
Actually, I think if they were planning on like starting a family, the Chevy is a better option because I'm pretty sure a VW camper van doesn't have a lot of seats in the back.
I think it was more like they wanted to get away. So I think the idea in the 70s is just to have like a camper van to just go drive and...
You're right. They were going to use it to go like road tripping. Oh my gosh. Mm-hmm. I never thought of it like that. I thought he was trying to buy a family car. Oh, that's worse.
But now that I'm just thinking of like when Mary comes back and like she makes a joke, like insinuates like that they got, down and dirty in that car. I'm just like, oh, it doesn't really matter.
It doesn't really matter whether it's a camper van or the Chevy. Things were going down.
Yeah.
So yeah, he convinces him, and then John actually introduces himself to Dean and says like, John Winchester, thank you, and like shakes his hand. Dean introduces himself as Dean Van Halen. Yeah. Van Halen. Sorry, it's just such a dumb name to choose. I love it so much.
Like, he couldn't think of anything. He was just like,
and he says, and thank you. And then I feel like that thank you is quite loaded. There's a few things here, like, thanks for buying me coffee, thanks for buying this car, because, like, if I had to go forward in time and find out we're driving a camper van, like, I think he would implode from the inside.
I don't think the camper van would have lasted, to be honest.
No.
As soon as they had kids, it would have been swapped out for something else.
I mean, they're also fairly good vehicles. I still see a lot driving around. And then Dean kind of questions him in this very weird roundabout way about if he's seen anything supernatural. Like, these hangover symptoms have been super weird. Like, I was kind of chilly. Did you feel any cold spots? And like, I swear my sense of smell, like I smelled something weird. Like, did you smell some like sulfur? And it's really odd. And then John's like, okay, stop, Moses. To which Dean's like, just look out for yourself. That's basically as far as he gets with him. That's kind of the only interaction that Dean has with John in this episode. Mm-hmm. Is he helps him buy the car, tells him to look out for himself, and then John leaves to go buy the Impala.
Do you think it's here that he clicks that John's not a hunter a little bit? Because like the questions that he's asking would have tipped up any other hunter.
Yeah, but I don't think he was testing him. I don't necessarily think Dean had any thought that he was at this point.
That's true. Yeah, you're right.
Cass sent him back to stop something. It would, and then you meet a person who's significant in your life. It would make sense that it like revolves around them. Mm-hmm. But I mean, Cass hasn't really told him what he's looking for, so it's like,
That's true.
is there a demon in the area? What am I supposed to be stopping here?
Before we move on, I forgot there was one thing that that stood out to me in the diner scene.
Oh, yeah.
The guy who like basically gets them to introduce John as John says, you know, tell your old man I said hi, but they retcon that.
Yes, we were talking about this before the podcast. They basically confirmed that Henry Winchester was alive during this episode.
Yeah, exactly.
And he's definitely not.
He's not, like...
There's a whole tragic backstory there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's quite funny. Well, one of the reasons is that they can't really establish his parents as dead, like John's parents as dead, because of what they do to Mary's parents in this episode are why Sam and Dean are named Sam and Dean, right? So if John had dead parents too, you know, they would have been like, well, why didn't they name him? Why is he not called Henry?
Yeah. Dean and Henry Winchester.
Oh, weird.
Yeah, I can't imagine Jared as a Henry.
No, this isn't. I don't know. He's Sam. No.
Yeah, exactly. Henny.
Henny. Love that. Oh. Again, we see John in the Impala, and he's pulling up to a house, and we see a young lady come out, and Dean is following him because what else do you do? Mm-hmm. She's confused about the car because clearly she's expecting something else. He explains that like it's better, and he calls her here Mary. Mm-hmm. I think Dean's face is, I don't know, he's just, because he hears John call her Mary and is like, oh crap, that's Mary.
That's my mum.
Yeah.
That's my mum.
What's this?
My car?
What happened to the van?
Mary, this is better than the van. It's got a 327, a 4-barrel carburetor.
Mom.
So there is a deleted scene in this where Mary climbs out the window, so it's sort of hinting at that she is more than what she seems, like that she's acrobatic enough to like do all this fancy stuff to get out the window.
Oh, okay, yeah. And that she's also sneaking out to see John. Again, we move to a different location, and John and Mary are in a diner, and Dean's watching this through the window, and he says,
Sammy, wherever you are, Mom is a babe. I'm going to hell. Again.
Which is a funny line.
It's a funny line,
why?
But it's disgusting. And like, it doesn't need to be said.
I guess you can think like...
I mean, okay, no. You can think that your parents were attractive as young people, young adults. But like, even still, it's kind of weird.
He could have said something like that was less creepy, like, well, I guess I know where I get my good looks from. Or something like that, right? That's not like, oh, I would definitely hit on my mum if she wasn't my mother.
Yeah, exactly. Again, with the sort of Back to the Future kind of vibes, you can kind of tell that like Marty was kind of like, thought his mum was attractive too.
Yeah.
But like, he didn't say it in that way. He was just like, you're an attractive person.
Yeah, I don't know what.
No,
something men going back in time and finding their mothers attractive probably
should be a trope that should be tossed in the trash,
or like go to therapy. So John and Mary are having a conversation in this diner, and they're talking about the fact that her dad doesn't approve of him. He's like, oh, I'll just go talk to him, be fine. And Mary's like, well, it's not you, it's just because, you know, what we realise that she's saying here, although it's only really, again, in a rewatch, is it seems like her dad is not approving of him because John's not a hunter. Like, he's not in the lifestyle, I think. And because he says that he's a mechanic from a family of mechanics. It's all like bloodline stuff. So yeah, they're from the wrong families. They're star-crossed lovers. It's all very Romeo and Juliet. He's a mechanic. She's a hunter. It would never work.
It kind of doesn't, you know.
So Mary's like, well, no, it's fine. You know, I'll be right back. And as she leaves, John pulls out like an engagement ring. It's all very sweet. So yeah, it looks like he's going to propose soon to her. But she's gone out to go bother Dean. She kind of grabs him and says, like, why are you following us? So she's clearly noticed before they got to the diner. She probably does get the better of him. I don't know how much she does and how much Dean doesn't want to hit his 19-year-old mother.
I mean, he doesn't generally want to fight women anyway. Yeah. So there is that too. I'm
glad he didn't go around the route of them having like a full weird fist fight. Like, it's just really odd. He eventually manages to grab her. As he does, he noticed that she's wearing a bracelet because he has her arm up. And it's got all these different charms on. And Dean asks if she's a hunter. Whew.
Yeah.
Right. One of the charms is the Men of Letters rune. Did you see that?
I did.
Yeah, that bothered me.
Well, so it was my understanding that the Campbells knew about the Men of Letters.
Oh, that's true, actually. Yeah, because they were still, well, mate, yeah. I'm like,
I don't know. I don't know, actually, because the Men of Letters were the American Men of Letters were wiped out with John's dad, Henry Winchester's generation.
Mm-hmm.
But that's still Sam Campbell's generation, because they would have been about the same age.
So it's likely that the Campbells did know about the Men of Letters, so it makes sense maybe why she would have that. Okay, I can see it. Fine.
But it also, like, I mean, I guess, I know they had to figure out a way for Dean to figure out that she was a hunter, but no other hunter just has, like, a bracelet of charms like that. And why would the Men of Letters one be on that?
Also, like, it was pretty generic, like, occult stuff.
Yeah.
Like, a bracelet that I totally definitely owned as a teenager. Maybe it's a kind of combination thing. Like, she's wearing protective symbols. She knows how to fight, clearly. And also realised that he was tailing her. So it's kind of like a culmination of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. The Men of Letters symbol just bothered me. I just feel like we didn't need it. But they didn't know where they were going, so I can forgive it.
Is it Men of Letters, or is it just like a symbol that they found and then they assigned Men of Letters to it?
That's true. I definitely have seen that symbol before. I'm sure I have before they used it on Supernatural. So, I mean, obviously, because it's here as well. So it obviously existed before that.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's just because it's so prominent.
Yeah. If anything, like, you know, with the Men of Letters, there's a lot more knowledge. I think had there been the, like, anti-possession symbol as the prominent one, that would have been better, because they would have known what that was.
I don't even know what other charm she had on her bracelet because I was too busy looking at that.
The only thing I remember seeing was the, like, inverted pentagram, and that was it.
Oh, yeah. Okay, fine.
We're then back outside the Campbell's home, and John is dropping off Mary. Dean is at the house as well.
Yeah.
She's just like, okay, well, I guess I should introduce you to, like, my family, because you're a hunter, I'm a hunter. Why is there another hunter in town? Yeah. Which, how much are the Campbells that big of a hunters? Because they're not one that moves around, clearly. Like, because John insinuates that they've known each other for years, which means they would have probably gone to high school together.
It's an interesting one. I kind of feel like Samuel Campbell is kind of the Bobby of that generation almost. That they kind of work as a base of operations. He's very untrusting of hunters because, I mean, he would be untrusting of Dean because if he does know all the hunters in the area and is in contact with them, why has he never heard of this guy before? Yeah,
that's true.
Which it makes sense why he's really suspicious of him. I think that's probably that's the only way I can see how they would operate. Or they definitely just very much keep themselves and do like local jobs, or you know, maybe her dad's away more than they make out here.
This whole like little interaction is pretty great.
I mean, come on, we're all hunters, right? I mean, we're practically family.
I do think it's interesting that John never brought up Mary's parents.
Yeah.
But then again, John clearly doesn't really like her parents because they don't really like him.
Yeah, it seems like, well, again, like the thing is, like, when would he? They clearly in Dean's time, they were already dead. I mean, he doesn't know how they died yet. But then he wouldn't have heard about them from Mary because he was still little. And yeah. I just don't think John would have ever bothered talking about anyone else. He's not much of a talker.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true.
Yeah.
But at the same time, by the sounds of it, the Campbells were a big family of hunters, right? So as he got into the hunter way of life, wouldn't have people like been like, oh, you know, this is a legacy family? And her brother's not in this, so we know that there is one.
Yes, we all know this. I feel like this is a thread that definitely could be picked up, because there's a couple of things here. First of all, we know that the yellow-eyed demon systematically killed off Mary's family, right? Mm-hmm. They're all dead, which is why Sam and Dean have never heard of any of them. But you would think that John would be keeping tabs on that if he's looking for Yellow Eyes. But maybe he just didn't realise, you know, he wasn't smart enough to see the connection between Mary and the... it doesn't make sense, though. That's an obvious connection to make if you're looking for someone's murderer to look into their family. Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Unless we're wrong and they do just keep to themselves and they don't actually ever interact with any other hunters.
Maybe. I was going to say, wouldn't he have found out that, like, he's already been killed by Yellow Eyes before?
It doesn't make sense, Annabelle, because you're right. Like, you think he would have known, or at least found out about a big family of hunters that were operating in his hometown after the fact, you know, when he's become a hunter and, like, looking into all of this, and that you know, they had been killed by a demon. I mean, even, let's just fully go down this track. He had written in his journal about the farmhouse that we see later and the demon attack there. Mm-hmm. So you're telling me that John never went there, maybe talked to the woman there, was like, oh yeah, well there were other people who came around asking about this, like a priest. And it's like, to start unpicking the threads of this, it doesn't quite work. I don't know, Annabelle.
Yeah, I don't know either. They were never going to get this right. No. We knew that. They were never going to get this right. And that's fine, because every show, when it goes along long enough, will forget things. Mm-hmm. But it's just, there's a lot in this episode that it's just like, when you really start to think about it, you're just like, wait a minute, they've already kind of established this, which actually kind of brings me back to the commentary where I think it was Jeremy Carver said, like, you know, I was newer to the show, like I wasn't there from the beginning, so maybe I didn't hold the lore as like closely as you did, and referring to Kripke. Yeah. So like this is definitely, you can kind of feel that in some of this not quite really making sense. Like he didn't, and also because we also know what like some of the story comes in the future, which doesn't make sense to what's happening here. So it's just like, ugh, you know, it's just with a 15-year story, there's going to be holes, and this is definitely one of them.
Yeah, I feel like we're going to be picking at the same threads when we eventually watch the Winchesters too. Yeah, I can't see how they can fully divorce it from the events of Supernatural and maintain the canon.
Yeah, exactly.
But we'll see. I don't know. We'll see.
I have to say that the casting of young Mary, I think, was slightly better than the casting of young John in this episode. Oh, yeah. Like, as much as I love like Matt Cohen, he doesn't really look like a younger version of...
He doesn't look like a young Jeffrey Dean Morgan. He's too fresh-faced and happy.
Which I guess is maybe what they were going for then.
I think so. Yeah, I have something to say about that.
So we're inside the house, and we see the patriarch of the Campbells, and he's quizzing Dean.
Now tell me something, Mr. Hunter. You kill vampires with wooden stakes or silver?
Neither. You cut their heads off. So did I pass your test?
Yep. Now get out of my house.
Dad.
I don't trust other hunters, Dean. Don't want their help. Don't want them around my family.
Knock it off, Samuel.
We learned that their names are Samuel and Deanna.
Yay.
And Dean is very confused and is just like, oh, so I just learned where our names come from.
Yeah, it's nice. I really like that they're named after their grandparents. I wonder if it means Mary kind of liked her mother slightly more because she named her oldest after her mother.
Well, when your dad gets stabbed in front of you and also kisses you.
Maybe it's the fact that he's slightly overbearing, I don't know.
Yeah, there's that too. And I do feel like everybody, like her mum's probably the one who's like, yeah, I'm okay with you leaving the hunter lifestyle, whereas Samuel obviously is not.
Yeah.
And it's because he wants to protect her.
Oh,
right?
Again, I just feel like, something about the women in the family wanting to get out of hunting, and then that being passed on to Dean. Something, Dean's very Mary-coded, etc.
Yeah, basically.
Because he is, like, we've always said that, like, Dean's closer to Mary than he is to John, like, in character-wise and aspirations, and it just further dug in here, because, yeah, she wanted to get out of hunting. It seems like Deanna's kind of just, she seems into it, but she's like, you know, would not mind if her daughter was out of it. And then you've got Dean, who definitely wants to be out hunting.
Yeah. And it's also funny that, like, you know, John actually ends up being more like Samuel.
Yeah.
By just, you know, pure coincidence, like wanting to protect his family in his own way.
Yeah.
But then, and then Sam being very much in that kind of late like line as well.
Yeah.
But then in Walker, the guy who plays Samuel is his dad.
I love that. Yeah. I knew that as well. I think it's pretty good, actually.
Yeah. So they're at a dinner table. They just, you know, Dean randomly gets invited to family dinner because obviously he would.
Yeah.
I can't imagine what he's going through.
I know.
To be sat down with a family that you have no idea who they were and like sit and have a conversation with other hunters. Like how much is your mind being blown right now?
Right. And also like knowing that all of these people are dead.
Yeah.
As well is just, Dean loves family, so I feel like he must be really happy in this moment. But at the same time thinking like, what is going on?
Yeah. I'm going to soak this all in while I can because I'm not going to have it for long.
Yeah.
Like the son of a bitch angel is going to come and destroy this for me.
And I think also that like, it must mess with his mind finding out that his family were hunters. Because even before all the events this episode, them sitting down and talk about hunting together, he must be thinking, would I have been dragged into this anyway? Is me being a hunter a foregone conclusion? If half my family were already.
And also, like, this is another way to be a hunter.
Yeah.
They have a home. They sit down and have dinner. This is not the way that they were raised as hunters. I almost feel it's the abnormal way.
Yeah. Yeah. This is what Dean wants though, right? He wants that work-life balance of being able to have a family and maybe not give up hunting also. You know, we often say that Dean wants out of the life, but I think if he could have found that happy balance, he would have done.
So, you know, he gets like a bit interrogated asking about like if he's working a job. And then Mary asks him like, why were you following John and her? Thought that there was something going after John, but he's not so sure anymore because obviously the new information of Mary in the picture being a hunter, like it makes more sense that something would be after her rather than John because John is just a bystander.
John Winchester mixing it up with spirits. Can you imagine?
I saw that.
What?
That sour lemon look.
Hold on. John's a really, really nice, naive civilian.
So what? You'd rather me be with a guy like this?
What? No.
It just seems really rude, actually, because it's just like, no, what? No, disgusting. Which makes sense, but it's like, how offended would you be?
I mean, it's a significant age gap, so it could also be like
That's true. Yeah, we'll go with that. I can't. Yeah.
They're trying to get information from each other without giving each other any information. Mary basically has enough and says, "Hey, look, no, you're working on a Witcher Farm case." And Dean's like, "Well, why does that sound familiar?" They kind of go over the case, and he figures out there's been demonic omens. So, I mean, I find it interesting that Dean can say demonic omens, and it made sense to Samuel.
Yeah, I thought this too, because this happens a lot, and I think this comes back to you saying that Jeremy Carver said he hadn't really watched a lot of the show, so maybe got some of the lore a bit sticky. Because I feel like it was originally established in like season 1 and 2 that demons were really rare, no one had ever seen them. Possibly only really Bobby knows about them and had passed on a bit of that information to John. But other than that, no one was really hunting demons. But then you get to season 3 and you see Isaac and Tamara who are hunting demons, and you suddenly have all these other hunters who are fully aware of them and stuff. So I feel like at some point they flipped the script on this and were like, actually, hunters do know of demons. It's just a rare interaction.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, the way that I read this was that Samuel's really knowledgeable about the hunting lifestyle rather than like a sort of blip in the law.
Yeah,
of supernatural.
I do think they changed at some point though, because I don't think that other hunters were supposed to know anything about demons.
Yeah,
you think of the reaction that they had in Phantom Traveler to there being a demon.
That's true.
Compared to how other hunters react late, like in season 3 and season 4 when they bring up demons, it's completely different.
Their reaction to demons is in Phantom Traveler is basically the exact same that Dean has to angels.
Right, exactly. He's like, they can't possibly exist. How dare they? And then you get to like here and you're like, oh yeah, demon. Yeah, sure, we know about demons. Yeah, it's just one of the things they changed over time, but they did it kind of gradually. So I think unless you're looking out for it, you wouldn't particularly notice.
Yeah, and I do feel like it makes sense as a viewer of the show that you wouldn't have to keep resetting that.
Yeah,
I mean, like the idea, like the idea that you had to keep on explaining what a demon was and how the thing, it's not good storytelling. So your knowledge has to then spread to the knowledge of the characters, which then doesn't make sense in the world, but it makes sense as you're watching.
The thing is here is like we have shown that progression though, because there were like loads of demons like let out from hell, and that's probably why hunters are more knowledgeable now. Like that could make sense canonically as to why more hunters know about demons. And then it would have shown an interesting contrast here for Dean to then go back and them to say, like, we haven't heard of a demon attack for like 20 years or something. I feel like they could have made a nod to the fact that there had been more in the future compared to like this time now. But it doesn't really matter.
No, I mean, it's just a sort of establishing that there's a demon in the area and they're going to go hunt it down.
Yep.
And it's kind of interesting, like, how their information gathering was so much different. Like they had to physically get the weather reports sent to them.
Yeah.
I can't imagine trying to be a hunter in the 70s. Like by the time you've gathered the information that you need, the creature's probably already moved on.
Right.
which makes sense as why there's so many demons that are 100 years, or not deep, but monsters that are hundreds of years old, because by the time that the people figured out, it wasn't like their prayers are not being answered. The creatures moved on.
Yeah, that's true actually. Yeah, I like that.
And Samuel basically turns down Dean's offer to work together.
Yeah.
So it's the next day and Mary and Samuel have arrived at the house, the farmhouse. Mary asks, why am I here? And Samuel says, family business. Mary, family.
Boo! Like, I don't know why I want to boo that. It's just like, boo.
Yeah, like it doesn't feel right. That feels like a Winchester mentality. But at the same time, I feel like it's a Hunter mentality. But like sometimes Winchester and Hunter are a bit like interchangeable.
Yeah. They wanted the callback and they got the callback.
It was a bit like jammed in there.
I just can't believe that basically John Winchester became Samuel Campbell. So ultimately Mary basically like
married her dad. Yeah.
And they always say like, oh, you become your parents when you get older, but like generally not your in-laws, but okay, fine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's definitely a bit of a weird one. Like, but how else would they could have done it? I don't know. So they exit the car and Mary goes off to the side and Samuel's like, what, why are you going over there? He's like, well, I'm doing my part in the job, because she's noticed like a young man away. Then Samuel goes to the door. As he gets to the door, Dean, dressed as a priest, is coming out of the house. I think it's interesting that he could find a priest outfit in a town that he doesn't really know.
He's also got a car as well. Like, so he's also stolen a car, but
I mean that I can see. Like, we know that Dean can hotwire cars. He knows everything about cars, like, of course. And it's the 70s. Like, their cars were not that good. You're talking like 1960s cars that are on the road.
Right. Yeah. It's funny that he's so resourceful.
How does he have money?
Well, he had his. Like, it seemed like Cass transported Dean in the clothes he was wearing, because he was using the jacket as like a blanket in that hotel room. So I'm guessing Dean sleeps with his wallet and phone in his I mean, it makes sense if you have to make a quick exit.
I think they keep, because like I'm pretty sure the leather jacket has like an inside pocket.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably where everything is. I don't think he keeps anything in his like actual like jeans pockets.
To be fair, he may have not had any cash in this. He very much could have got on doing stuff in this with no money.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, he could probably just go steal some stuff. Again, It's the 70s. Security systems probably not really that in place. And like you would probably just go to like a church, right? And get...
Yeah, you just break into the priest bit and take some priest clothes. I know churches.
Dean leaves Samuel to then talk to Beth, which is the wife of Tom, who was like chewed up by his harvester. Dean sees Mary's talking to this young man, Charlie. This is basically Bella's story.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
Charlie's father, Tom, would get drunk and then be like abusive to him and his mum. Somebody came along, a Bible thumper he calls, and says that he could make it all stop, and all that he needed to do is in 10 years he'd come calling. Yeah. Basically, he made a demon deal. Dean asked Charlie, did his eyes turn red? And he's like, well, no, but in the weird light, his eyes went yellow. Mary and Dean kind of go off to the side. And it's just like, they discussed that it was a demon deal. It's just like, this is another point that actually came up with the commentary, that like on a reshoot, they would have made him walk a little bit further away, because it really is just like 2 feet away, and like that was it.
Yeah, like
so you would have been able to completely hear the conversation that they had.
Right, at least they're aware of it. That they know this. The fact they straight up like took Bella's story essentially and gave it to this random kid in the past is just odd. And I didn't like it very much. But fine, they probably didn't do it on purpose, because they're just not that invested in it. I don't know. So
we're back at the Campbell's house. The way that Deanna is chopping up that banana, oh my god, they give me anxiety. Just like slamming it down. I'm like, is that really necessary? Bananas are so soft. You can literally just cut it like a normal person. You don't need to be like, cha, 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 cha. So I don't want to see how you cut bananas, and this is not the one way that I want to see it done. So this is where they kind of get really explainy, and I was kind of not paying attention anymore. But essentially the scene is just like, Dean knows a lot about demons.
Yeah.
Samuel's like, oh, we've never heard of a yellow-eyed demon, like that, it can't exist.
Yeah, well, I have. This thing killed my family.
Just calm down, son.
You don't get it, do you? I mean, you are in danger. We are all in danger. In fact, you need to get yourself someplace safe.
Not until we know what we're dealing with here.
Sounds right, Dean. It could be a demon, it could be a shapeshifter, any number of things.
I know what this thing is.
Dean's like, okay, well, this guy, Daniel Elkins, he lives in Colorado. He has a cult, the cult, and they've heard of the cult.
Yeah.
Again, more explaining-ness. Dean gets John's journal out and like says, my dad made a list of everybody who was affected by the yellow-eyed demon. This reason doesn't really make sense, but whatever.
It kind of does. I guess like if you're like tracking a serial killer,
you
would want to know like all the places they had been if you could track it. I imagine that John had one of those like mats with the string, except somehow travel friendly. Like it would have been one detail that I always feel was missing from like John's trunk of his car was a pinboard map like on the hood that had like all the locations of the yellow-eyed demon in like string. I think his explanation here of like John seeing into the future was actually pretty a kind of a smart thing to say, because it really didn't make sense why he had all this information.
And it kind of tracks for like hunters that there would be psychics, though I don't feel like the psychics are that specific in this universe either, but anyway.
Yeah, it's just kind of like it's supernatural, don't ask too many questions about it.
Yeah, exactly. He finds that somebody else tomorrow night is going to be attacked, or there's going to be an interaction between the Yellow Eyes and this person, Lydia Walsh, very close to where they are now. he's like, well, you know, I know I sound crazy, but you got to trust me. And Samuel's like, oh, yeah, you are crazy.
Yeah.
Dean's just, no, I've got a plan. I'm going to go do it. And that's that. Dean then goes to talk to Mary because, of course, like, he wants to go talk with Mum.
Oh, the scene. No.
And I hate it because I hate it.
Hey, I wanted to tell you, for what it's worth. Doesn't matter what your dad thinks. I like that John kid.
You do?
Yeah. Yeah, I think you two are meant to be.
Basically.
He's being Marty McFly. He's trying to make sure his parents are back so he doesn't disappear.
Exactly. And then he asks what John is like.
Yeah.
Which I think is a really interesting question. Because his perception of John is one way and one way only.
Yeah.
And he's starting to realize his one way is very much like his mother's family way.
Yeah.
So the fact that she calls him like sweet, even after the war and after everything, he lives in a happily ever after. It's just like, oh my goodness. It's so sad.
She says he's everything a hunter isn't. It's just wild to me. I did think here, just to give a Star Wars analogy, because I do like comparing Star Wars to Supernatural or the other way around. Really, for Dean, the demon killed both of his parents because he obviously lost Mary, like she physically died. But from what Mary says here about like how John is now, like, he's a nice guy. The war didn't really change him that much. He's still good and he's kind and not a hunter. Dean also very much like lost his father because, to the obsession and everything. Didn't really ever get him back either. He didn't get to see this John. Like, this John didn't raise him.
No, not at all.
And I know, Darth Vader it up, right? John's Anakin Skywalker at this point. He's gonna Vader it up once Yellow Eyes kills Mary. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's hard, right? Because I don't like John as a character, but I do understand him almost. It made me feel sad. It made me feel sad for them that they did lose John at the same time that they lost Mary.
And it just gets infinitely worse with the rest of this conversation.
Right? This is the hardest scene of the episode.
It really is. So Mary confides in Dean that he thinks that John's going to ask to marry her. And Mary's like, oh, Dad's going to explode, but I don't care. I'll just run away. I just love John.
I want to get out. This job, this life. I hate it. I want a family. I want to be safe. The worst thing I can think of, the very worst thing, is for my children to be raised into this like I was. Well, I won't let it happen.
The worst line in Supernatural, I swear to God.
Yep.
And like Dean is like crying by this point. I'm trying. I can see it in my mind. There's one thing that I wish they had got a little bit better with Mary's character when she comes back, is that she should have been more outraged.
Yes.
About the fact that they were raised as hunters in the way that they were.
Yeah.
And she's kind of mad about it to start with and then just accepts it. And almost, she's entitled to go like live her life. I do feel that for Mary when she does come back, because it's a super weird situation. But I don't know. I feel like she should have been angrier about it.
Yeah. And that like whole redemption episode should have
Where was the anger?
Yeah. Where was the anger? Where was everything that like there was no confrontation in that, and no. I think that's why I didn't like that episode that much.
Same.
Because they only had a very short amount of time, so you probably didn't want to rest on anger, but there had to have been some. Yeah. For that, you needed that bitter to have the sweet.
Yeah. I agree with you. They could have had the same kind of reconciliation of deciding to like put the past behind us and just decide to be as a family for a bit, but there needed to be that initial anger because like Mary didn't want this. She didn't want this life.
But she also kept it a secret from John, so he wouldn't have known, right? Had she been honest and being like, hey, this is what's out in the world, but we need to keep our family safe and like not get involved in this.
That's very true. Yeah, I think you're right. I think Mary is at fault here too. She should have. I think maybe she was worried about John being dragged into it. You know, being put. Maybe she thought if she could disappear and, you know, not have to be a hunter anymore, that would keep her family safe. I don't know why she thinks that, because every story of hunters ends the same.
Well, maybe no, she does know other hunters, so yeah, no, I don't know.
You know? But again, maybe this is addressed in the prequel. Maybe we see her setting up secret devil's traps and things in their house. Again, I want a sitcom style secret hunter Mary.
Also, one thing that I would have really liked to have seen in this episode is that the home that they have could have been the home that she lived in.
Yeah.
Because that's not the same house.
No, it's not. Yeah, they could have stayed in the same house in Lawrence because, her parents are dead now. So, yeah, you're right. That would have been quite cool. I don't know. It bothers me. I feel for Dean because he's hearing his mother saying, like, you, right, are the worst thing I could imagine happening to my child as well. Because that's how he's going to read it. Because freaking Winchester.
Of course. Yeah, no, he's definitely like, had he revealed that he was her son at this point and she believed him, God, I can't.
That would have changed. No, that would have changed history. That would have done if he if she had believed him, if he told her, if there had been some communication.
Yes.
Maybe. It would have gone differently. But he's so vague with her here. I mean, I do understand it. He's gone back in time. It's a super weird situation.
Yeah. Obviously, in his mind, it's like he's going by pop culture rules on time travel.
Yeah, he is.
Because he doesn't. He only tells. I guess, and the reason why he tells Samuel who he actually is in this episode is because he knows that he's dead.
Yeah.
Right. In the future, so it doesn't matter that he tells him now.
And it's to protect Mary, and ultimately this seems like the goal of this for Dean, is to protect Mary at this point. That would have been so interesting though if he had told her. I mean, they could have. The thing is, he could have told her. She could have had a whole reaction to it, and they could have retconned it and say like, "Well, actually, no one remembers anything that happened on that day." I would like to have seen that reaction though. Man,
yeah, that would have been. Because she would have the Mary that, because this Mary is very different to the Mary of 1980.
Yeah.
And the one that we see in the Jin episode.
Yeah.
I can imagine in this, she would have, one, freaked the fuck out. But then two, like, if this Mary acted like Sam Smith Mary, probably would have like loved on him, right? Just given him like a massive hug and just being like, I can't believe you're my son. Like,
it would have been so nice.
She would have been proud of him no matter what, even though that this is not what she wanted for him. Right,
and that would have taken the sting out of this, of like, I never wanted you to be a hunter.
Which is probably why they didn't put in there.
One thing I definitely would have liked is in the future when Mary comes back for them to discuss this.
Yeah.
That would have been a really interesting conversation.
Hey, do you remember when I came back in 1973 and I told you not to get out of bed in 1983 and you did it?
She totally would have remembered it too, because it'd be like, oh yeah, the night my parents died. Yeah, I totally remember who you are.
And the night that John died in my arms, literally.
That's a good point. Okay, let's stop with this. We were talking about, it's weird that John doesn't remember who he is after these, very small interaction with him. How on earth did Mary not remember that Dean was there in 1973? Because a lot of stuff went down for her that night.
Yeah, a lot of stuff.
He played a big part in
it. Some might say he was the catalyst of it all.
Maybe that's why their relationship is slightly strained when she does come back. Maybe she's harboring
I remember
secret resentment of did Dean inadvertently help get my parents killed? Did my son? Okay, going too far into the time loop. Let's get back into
And also, so another thing that sort of threw me off with, they bring something up and I was like, wait a minute, this doesn't really kind of make sense, because he says,
On November 2nd, 1983, don't get out of bed. No matter what you hear or what you see. Promise me you won't get out of bed.
Demon Dale's come 10 years to the day.
Yep. Oh, yeah. it's like April. It's like April, isn't it?
Yeah. So
they totally set this in November. Why didn't they?
But yeah, so the demon was like 8 months late.
Maybe Sam didn't appear at the time the demon was expecting him.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, it is a bit of a different demon deal, I guess, because he's not, like, the demon's not asking for her soul.
Maybe it just has to be the same calendar year.
Yeah. In this deal, it's very unspecific. It was just like, I'm gonna be back in about 10 years.
Yeah,
yeah.
right. That's totally true. I never clocked that. That totally, yeah. Okay, fine. Okay, fine. That's really funny.
Yeah, and it's funny that they specifically gave a date in April, and then like say November,
and there was no reason for them to give that date in April, because it just makes it difficult.
So Dean is now driving to Colorado to go get the cult, and as he's driving, Castiel, calling him Castiel at this point,
yeah, we are. That's true.
just pops up in the car and doesn't say anything. Like, he's literally just staring forward, enjoying the ride as if he's been there the entire time.
Maybe
which who knows he was.
Yeah.
Sam would have wanted in on this. Why not bring him back?
You had to do this alone, Dean.
And you don't care that he's tearing up the future looking for me right now?
Sam's not looking for you.
And then Dean's like looking for confirmation. He's like, so if I do this, the family curse is broken. Mum and Dad live happily ever after. And Sam and I grew up playing Little League and chasing tail. Which, I mean, he was always chasing tail. It doesn't matter what timeline. And I think it's interesting that Castiel responds, it's that if you do alter the future, it's not predestined that Cass isn't giving any details. I think Cass knows that he's going to fail. He kind of guilt trips him here, because he says if you don't become hunters, all the people that you saved will die. And again, this episode had so many like Jin callbacks for me.
Yeah, it did,
like this being one of them. And I think it's interesting that like he says he would care, but Dean wouldn't care because he wouldn't know.
I mean, yes, he wouldn't care. You're right.
He wouldn't know.
Yeah, because he wouldn't be a hunter. It is very much the Jin dream where everyone's alive and everyone's safe, and I wonder, but
the only reason why the Jin dream didn't work is because he remembered that he was a hunter, and he looked back at all the people that he saved, and that's what kicked him into gear and being like, well, as nice as this is, it's not real, and I can't accept this to be reality because I am who I am. I am a hunter, and therefore I need to save people. Whereas if he can stop this cycle, this curse, he doesn't have that.
Well, I think that almost they're forgetting here is that this is Dean post-hell. He spent 40 years in hell. Like, hasn't he given enough for these people? Like, hasn't he, doesn't he deserve to have his family if he can save them? And I fully believe that's where his headspace is now. Yeah,
exactly.
And I think that continues for him for the rest of the series. Yes, they saved all these people, but I do think it's that after hell, Dean almost flipped in his perception of hunting and was like, well, I've done it. Like, I've gone to hell. Like, if I save anyone else but from this point on, they're always just looking towards the next big bad and the next apocalyptic event, and they never really slow down. So there's no chance for him to get out. But I feel like if he could have done, he would have done.
Yeah.
But like, because he says here, like, I care, but these are my parents. Like, I can't let them die again. There are people put in front of him here for him to save, so he can't not save them, even if it means he doesn't save a bunch of other people. It's very much like the trolley problem for Dean, but not really, because some of the people on one half of the track are his family, so there's really no choice. Yeah. Castiel. Now, like, Why did he even offer him the if you cannot alter the future here? Because I think you're right. I don't think he ever could have done.
Mm-hmm.
If the events are in motion, like this was always going to happen.
Yeah.
So it's a bit cruel here for him to suggest that it could be otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the only reason he's telling him this is to keep events moving. And
also to motivate him. As much as he wants to save his parents, I do think deep down he would regret not being a hunter.
But you're right, he wouldn't know because time loops, so...
Yeah, that's true.
Time's confusing. So Dean gets to Daniel Elkins' home. You know, he manages to steal the gun, but at the same time, Daniel Elkins is holding a shotgun on him. He promises to bring it back, though, and basically convinces him by saying, like, I have a chance to save my family's life, and also, like, I'm doing it anyway, so, like, shoot me.
Yeah.
If you don't want me to go. Daniel doesn't seem inclined to shoot him, so he lets him go with the gun. And Dean kind of repays that by telling him where he can find it afterwards. Mm. So at least they closed this loop. Like, they managed to close this one because it's assumed that Daniel Elkins did go to Lawrence and pick up the gun.
There's two little things which kind of answer, but not really. Mm-hmm. So when they find the cult,
yeah,
or when they go to find the cult and it's missing,
yeah,
there's a gun box.
Yeah.
There is no gun box in this episode.
Maybe he just took the gun out of the gun box.
But it was just in the safe, like, as it was.
Oh, what? Maybe he built the gun box afterwards.
So that's where I was like, okay, like, because in the beginning of this, before we got to the end of the scene, I was like, what?
Yeah.
Why is a gun just it should be in the gun box?
The thing that I want to check on, but I'm not going to for my own sanity, is the bullet count.
Yeah, no, it's wrong.
Because he definitely shoots the gun in this episode, and so there should be a bullet missing when they find it, and there's not, but okay.
Yeah, that was one thing that came up in the commentary again as well.
They knew, okay, at least they know.
It was pointing out to them after the fact that the bullet count was wrong.
Oh, it's so frustrating. I would get so annoyed. As a writer, I would have been like, no, we have to explain that somehow. Like, in some other episode, maybe Daniel Elkins knew how to make bullet, I don't know. So we go back to Mary and Samuel, and they are back in their house cleaning guns. And Mary's asking where Dean went. And Samuel says, well, he went to go kill a demon. You know, he tells her that he's going after Liddy Walsh because there was supposedly a demon there. And Mary's like, that's my friend. Why didn't you tell me? Like, what the heck? So decide that they have to help her. Mary goes to the car. And, like, Deanna's like, what's wrong with Mary? And Samuel says, like, well, she wants to hunt and she doesn't want to hunt. He asks if it's a female time of the month thing, which is like, okay, it's the 70s, fine.
Yeah,
but, why?
That's the only reason why I gave it a pass.
Yeah, like the only reason that gets a pass. I mean, even Deanna's like, that's just rubbish.
Yeah.
So what? I love Deanna and I wish we'd know more about her because I feel like she's so done with Samuel's like crap in this episode. Yeah. She's kind of supportive of Mary. She kind of likes Dean. Like, I just feel like she seems like a really nice person and I wish we knew more about her before she dies. So we cut to Liddy Walsh and she's with a doctor and it's basically saying about how someone she cares about, it's not clear who it is, but I assume her father because they're in her house. I don't know why. I just assumed so.
And she's supposed to be Mary's friend. She's about the same age, so...
Yeah, it kind of all makes sense. That whoever this is has cancer and it's bad, and he's offering her a deal. The doctor said it's just in 10 years I'm going to come and ask you for something, and she says what, and he says nothing you'll miss. And then at that point the doc's eyes turn yellow and it's like, oh, okay, it's Azazel.
So do you think he's making just random deals now? He's not making specific baby generation deals.
So because he talks later about like needing permission to come into their house and things like vampire rules. I think he's just making as many as possible on the kind of hope that these people will have children in 10 years that he can like, that are babies, that he can kind of corrupt with demon blood. So I think it's kind of like a catch-all fishing, a trawler net of demon deals essentially.
The only reason why I asked that is because he says it's like nothing you'll miss, and I feel like that's the way that someone's referred to a soul before in this show, but it could also be like, you know, any other show that deals with this kind of stuff.
I think it could be taken like that because I think they're like looking to do that like reveal later on about like what he's actually after, so it could be her soul in this case. So Samuel comes in and he shoots the yellow-eyed demon in the chest. Lydia's like, oh my god. The demon manages to disarm him because it's just a normal shotgun. There's a point that Samuel calls the demon a son of a bitch. It's like a nice little family trait there. And then Mary comes in and is standing sort of behind the demon with a knife, but she gets attacked too. She gets grabbed by the throat. The demon's super creepy with Mary, I guess because she's an attractive young woman, and basically says that he likes her, then slams her against the wall as well, so they're both cool. Dean comes in with the Colt. Azazel, the yellow-eyed demon, is super surprised. He's like, where did you get that? And as he kind of like cocks it, he doesn't shoot it here, does he? Not in this bit. Because the demon just smokes out, so he doesn't bother shooting the Colt. Because clearly the yellow-eyed demon is scared of the Colt. I mean, that would make sense, because it can kill him. So yeah, they regroup after this fight, and Dean asks Mary, what did he say to her? And she just said that, he told me that he liked me. But it's like super freaked Mary out, even though she's a hunter. She's young, right? So she really doesn't like what's happened here. And so she's basically he looks really freaked out and really scared. Maybe this is what the strongest thing they've kind of come up against. It would make sense, right?
Yeah, I mean, the question that Samuel asked was about vampires.
Yeah. So, and I don't know how much hunting has Mary done as well. Would she have been hunting as a teenager, or were they just kind of like training her up? So maybe was going against things that were not as dangerous as this.
I think she had the same upbringing as Sam and Dean, so she's been in it for a long time. I think she's probably faced off against a bunch of stuff.
That would make sense actually with the comments she said to Dean about being raised in the life. Actually, poor Mary. Samuel comes up to Dean and is like, "Nice job," and Dean's like, "I missed the shot." Like you can kind of see there's a difference here between Samuel and John, because he's actually trying to like say, "Oh, you did a good job there." Where John would have been like, no, you missed the shot, which is exactly what Dean says about himself. And like Samuel even says, like, take the compliment. So back at the house, Dean and Samuel are having a chat, and he's going to lay it all out on the table. He's saying, like, if we don't kill this thing, Mary's going to die. And Samuel's like, well, how do you know that? And although he's originally like, it looks like Dean's going to explain from John's journal, go with this, like, I have a psychic father kind of thing. He eventually just decides to tell him the truth.
Now, this is going to sound a little... Actually, it's going to sound massively, massively crazy.
Okay.
Mary is my mother.
Excuse me?
And I am your grandson. And I know what the hell I'm talking about.
You want to run that by me again, son?
My real name is Dean Winchester. I was born January 24th, 1979. My parents are Mary and John Winchester.
That Mary gets killed in 1983. And he says, I think that's what happened tonight. I think that he caught her scent, and if we don't catch this thing now and kill it and it gets away, then she's going to die. Yeah. I love that he just laid it all out, because he's so worried for Mary, essentially.
Yeah. It doesn't, like I said, he doesn't reveal it to Mary because, like, Mary lives. Obviously, he doesn't know when Samuel dies.
Yeah.
But he knows he's not in the picture, so it doesn't really matter to tell him this information.
Yeah. And again, I do think Mary's safety trumps possibly messing with the timeline for Dean.
Yeah.
So we see Mary, and she runs up to John because she's been freaked out by this demon, and basically says, like, you promised you'd take me away, we're going.
Yeah.
So they get in the car and drive off. Back with Dean and Samuel, he's still explaining himself. He's like, look, I know all these things. Like, I knew about the cult. I knew about the demon. Like, how could I make this up? And Samuel basically says what everyone always says in a time travel movie, was like, this sounds unbelievable. I feel kind of a link to you in some way that I can't explain, so I'm going to believe you. Some kind of genetic bond.
Because that's a thing.
Yeah. Some kind of recognition. I mean, I guess if this was like real life, I guess you could look at your grandchild and be like, I can see my daughter in your features, in your face, right? Obviously, the actors here, but like, you do look like your family. There are traits that you have, or mannerisms that you have.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
That match up.
The son of a bitch thing should have clued him in.
Just the son of a bitch thing by itself. Yeah.
That is definitely a Winchester Campbell trait.
Right, exactly. It's a shame that Dean doesn't have anything tangible of his grandparents that like Mary gave to him in some way that he had, but like, it's not something that they were discussed.
But then again, like you said, a lot of things got destroyed in that house fire, so
Yeah, sucks, man.
apart from that one chest of like old pictures.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Which I don't even know. You know, we don't know where that is.
Still in that lady's basement, presumably. You know, Samuel's asking, like, well, how do we find this person? And again, he opens the journal and gets the cult out. And Samuel wants to see it. But, like, Dean's like, no. That's my gun. This is our family heritage gun. It's actually Bobby's gun, really.
Yeah.
Like, Samuel says, like, well, I'm your grandfather. But with that, he kind of reveals himself to be the yellow-eyed demon. So that means that Dean never told Samuel any of this.
Mm-hmm.
He told it all to the yellow-eyed demon. But I guess maybe, this is harsh, Samuel probably would have been aware, because people always say when they're possessed by demons that they know what's going on. Which makes this kind of more heartbreaking.
This is the second time that we've seen a sneaky possession.
Yeah.
And we're not seeing how they're doing it, because when they smoke out, it's very loud, it's very like this big action and all this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, we don't know when Ruby 1.0 was possessed by Lilith, right? Because there was no sound. And then this one as well. Are they doing what they did in Phantom Traveler by just like, you know, going up their nose kind of thing?
I've been thinking about this because there's an episode, and I cannot for the life remember what episode it is, but it's the one where they find John, and so it must be season 1, and they shoot Tom the demon, and there's 2 people in the crowd of people outside the building, and the smoke alarm's going off, that get possessed by demons really sneakily too. So I wonder if this has been established for a long time. It's just got to go through. This sounds gross. It's just got to go through into your body, right? Yeah. So that can be anywhere, I guess. Mm-hmm. I like nose.
Just like,
yeah.
They're not showing really demon possession, like the actual act of a possession. That is only like the smoke out.
Yeah, I mean, there was a point here because there was a moment where Dean and Mary were having a chat outside the house. Mm-hmm. That could have been the point that Samuel was possessed. I think it probably was. But yeah, it's for sneaky storytelling reasons.
Yeah, exactly. And like, does the smoke obviously just doesn't disappear, but you never follow where the smoke goes.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a weird one. It's a weird one, and I don't even think they ever kind of establish why any of that happens. But there you go. We carry on from the last scene because obviously the Yellow Eyes doesn't know the future because he's, you know, present for this time. He's like, oh, so you're a future boy. And he understands that there's angels.
I only know one thing that's got the juice to swing something like that. You must have friends in high places.
Confronts him, says, hey, look, I killed your mommy. And you came all this way back just to see me? Like, oh. I hate that they called her a slut, but there you go. He's
a demon. I'm going to let it pass, but I don't like it either. I let it pass because he's supposed to be evil, I guess.
But it's just like, come on. She's not, though. She's actually 18 in this episode because her birthday is December.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
So, no.
No.
The Yellow-Eyed Demon asks if he's one of the psychic kids, but he, like, sniffs Dean.
Are you one of my psychic kids? No, not you. Maybe you got a sis. Or a bro. That's terrific. Means it all worked out.
He's connecting dots pretty quick, which means like...
But it makes sense that he does. Mm-hmm. Because I thought about this. Annabelle deeply. Because... he knows about angels, and he knows that Dean must be in contact with angels. And why would angels come back down to Earth when they hadn't been seen in centuries? Plus a kid who's come back because he's trying to make psychic children. It all leads into something he says later about end games. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it's... I hope Yellow Eyes doesn't remember this interaction. No one can remember... No, wait. Okay, one more. No one can remember these events. They can't remember these because Mary would have remembered, John remembered, If anyone would have remembered, it would have been Yellow Eyes.
Yeah. Absolutely.
100%.
Then maybe that's why he's so knowledgeable about the cult.
He knew about the cult as Dean pulled it out and pointed it at him.
But I meant like even in season 1, like why he wanted to trade out the cult way back.
Or maybe because he knew that was going to be his end.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, but like, look, you're going to have these problems with time episodes. It's fine. Yeah. It's fine. I'm fine. I'm fine about it.
And Yellow Eyes sort of reveals that he doesn't want the souls of the people that he's making deals with. He wants just their children.
Mm-hmm.
And he wants to choose perfect parents like Mary.
Yeah.
Because they're strong, which that doesn't really mean anything, but whatever, okay. And he calls them my own little master race, the ideal breeders, which I think is gross.
Yeah.
Can we not refer to women as breeders, please? That's disgusting.
Yeah.
Because, he says breeders, so of course he would think it would be his children.
I'm so glad. No, I'm not glad. I'm vaguely happy. I'm happy they cleared this up. That John is actually Sam's father and it's not Yellow Eyes.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was ever in doubt in the show, but I'm glad that they just hit, because it would have been horrible.
Yeah, I mean, he says it and clarifies it, but he does say that she would be the exception, which is still gross.
Yeah, that's still gross. I don't like the misogyny in this and the sexism, and I don't enjoy it.
So Dean's like asking, well, why are you making deals then if you're not taking their souls and you just want their children? He says, I need permission. He needs to be invited into their homes because there's red tape.
Bureaucracy. Everyone has it.
Yeah, exactly. And he explains what he's going to do. Like, he's going to stand over the crib, give some blood, and it's better than Ovaltine, vitamins, minerals, and it's going to make you big and strong.
I don't know. I really like Ovaltine. It's been years since I've drank Ovaltine.
I've not had Ovaltine in... I don't think I don't know. I have no idea. Actually.
I love Ovaltine. I want some Ovaltine.
So they can lead your discount demon army? Is that your big plan?
Please. My endgame's a hell of a lot bigger than that, kid.
Endgame? What endgame?
Like I'm gonna tell you.
Right. I need to have words. Okay. We're gonna gather that the demon army was the original plan, but Yellow-Eyed here is kind of confirming that it's bigger than that, which we all knew. We know because we watched the Supernatural.
Yeah.
But so it's alluding to the fact that he was looking for Lucifer's vessel, I think, trying to bring around the apocalypse.
Mm-hmm.
This whole endgame stuff that he's referring to means that he was playing into that plan. I had kind of forgotten that this conversation happened because we've definitely talked about this before. But they are tying it together, and I'm glad they did. It kind of makes sense. Okay, but he talks about endgame here, which I'm guessing, like I said, endgame is Apocalypse, Lucifer's vessel.
Mm-hmm.
And he's finding strong parents. Do you think he's taken some kind of weird interest in Mary because on some level he knows about the whole bloodline thing, whether it's instinctual or what, the whole Michael Lucifer bloodline deal?
I think so.
But the thing is, it works, but I don't think they'd established that at this point in the writing.
I don't think so either. And also, I think, because he has a thing for sniffing, like this demon has a thing for sniffing.
He just like sniffing people, yeah.
Because he sniffs Mary too. So I'm wondering if it's like a little bit of that as well. Like,
yeah,
there's prophecy dust.
Yeah, she's got some kind of like aura that she's important. I think that's what this is. I don't think it was written intentionally like that, but it does work. Mm-hmm. But I want to bring it up because, yeah, he's talking about endgame here. So yeah, Lucifer vessel, apocalypse, blah, 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 blah.
And you would think, because again, he also sniffs Dean, that had they kind of established a bit more of this, he would have tried to kill Dean a bit more because he's Michael's vessel. So if he got rid of Michael's vessel...
They want that fight to go down. Yeah. They want it to go down. So, because he checks if Dean was one of his special children, like sniffs him, he's like, no. But maybe he checks because he can feel there's something about him that's important, just like he can with Mary. I don't know. I'm grasping at straws here, but it kind of fits.
Yeah. I mean, they get out of explaining what his end game is.
Yeah.
By saying he's not going to tell you because of the angels. Yeah. Which is, fair enough. But because the angels don't know either, I'm guessing, at this point. Not really. They know that something's bad happening with Sam, and that's the thing that needs to be stopped. But
it's really frustrating, right? And I want to talk about this at the end, because how much do they know? Because Cass says basically they don't know anything, but I think they do.
I think they definitely know more than they're letting on.
There's so much. There's a lot in this. There's the layers. It's an oniony episode.
Nice Shrek reference. The Yellow Eyes basically says, not gonna I'm gonna cover my tracks. And Dean's like, well, you can cover whatever the hell you want, but I'm still gonna kill you. And he basically says, he confirms that he's the one who's gonna kill him.
I love this.
Which I love this.
I'm still gonna kill you.
Right.
Now that I'd like to see. Maybe not today. But you look into my eyes, you son of a bitch. Because I'm the one that kills you.
It's not even that I'm the one that's going to kill you. It's just I'm the one that kills you.
Yeah, I love it. The intensity on his face, the angry lip quiver that he does on this. It's you tell him.
The Yellow Eyes didn't even throws it in his face, and it's like, well, okay, so you're going to save everybody, right? Is that it? Well, I'll tell you one person you're not going to save, and he stabs himself.
Yeah.
And it's your granddaddy. Throughout all of this scene, Deanna's been in the background, slowly sneaking up to try and get an attack in.
Yeah.
And as soon as he stabs his vessel, he then teleports to her.
Yeah.
And kills Deanna.
I know, I was sad Deanna died. I was more sad Deanna died than Samuel died. Yeah. I get sad when the women in this show die, because I feel like we knew nothing about her. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sucks. Where's Deanna's backstory? I've got Samuel's whole life here. He's a hunter. I know everything about him. He's basically John Winchester. So, he's fully understood. The Poirot's what do we know about Deanna? She makes fruit salad.
Yeah.
She can
aggressively.
Yeah. Can really chop a banana.
So the Yellow-Eyed Dean leaves the house, and Dean's like, Mary.
Yeah.
We then cut to the Impala with John and Mary sat there, and John's like, I guess you can guess why we're at this secret location led by a river. John tries to propose to Mary at this point. But before he can kind of get the words out, Samuel opens the door to Mary's side of the car and yanks her out of the car, basically. So she thinks it's her dad the entire time. Even when the Yellow-Eyed Demon grabs John and kills him by snapping his neck. And he just falls to the ground, and that's the end of John Winchester. Boo-hoo. Even this iteration of John, I'm just nah. And the Yellow Eye says, no, I didn't just kill John. I also killed, your mum and dad too. And he shows the stab wound in Sam's stomach. She then calls him a son of a bitch.
Love it. Family trait.
Yep.
You son of a bitch!
Well, sticks and stones may break my bones, and they won't bring your family back either.
I love that line, actually.
Yeah. He makes a kiss and make up joke, which I think is it's funny because obviously that's how demon deals are made. So it's just let's make a demon deal. That'll make everything better. We've said some things, so let's make a demon deal. And he then proposes that I will bring back John. And then she says, well, what about my parents? He says, no, just John. And you can be done with hunting, have the white picket fence, station wagon, a couple of kids, no more monsters or fear. I'll make sure of it. Do you think that's true? It must be true because for 10 years, they can live an apple pie life.
And they do, as far as we know. I mean, until the prequel happens.
Yeah, no, but then surely if he doesn't keep up his end of the bargain, she could have reneged and not let him in to the house.
She totally could have used fairy rules on this. Do you know what I mean? Because if she doesn't get a sweet ass life after this, because he said it in the deal, totally could have reneged on that deal and be like, look, you didn't hold up your end of the bargain. What's interesting here is she swears that she's going to kill him, before they make this deal. And I think for a second there, you see like, oh, this actually, if John had been the one to die, I wonder if their lives would have been any different. There's a moment there where you just see, I don't know, you see that kind of obsession in her that I think is also in John. And I wonder if 10 years on, if John had been the one to catch yellow eyes and died, whether Sam and Dean's life would have been any different. I don't know if that's too harsh on Mary, but...
No, I mean, I think you might be right, actually. Yeah. Because she is... As much as she wants to get out of it, she, like you said, she gets back into being a hunter very quickly when she comes back.
Yeah.
Which I guess we should really point out, that's a huge spoiler. That's massively.
We've definitely said multiple times this episode that she comes back.
Oops. Oh well.
I'll put it in the notes. It's fine.
Yeah. But like you said, she comes back into being a hunter very quickly. Even though she would have been out of it for 10 years.
Yeah.
And then dead for 30 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it would have been any different. The only difference is that I think if anything, the roles would have been reversed in that, because like you said, Dean is very much Dean is very much Mary coded.
Yeah.
So if Mary was on this revenge binge, so would have Dean.
Yeah.
And then Sam might have been more of the laid back for one, and as much as it would have been interesting to see his reaction to Jessica being killed in that way, whether he would have reacted in the same cold John Winchester way.
I might be being unfair to Mary though, because I think if it had been the other way around and John had died, because she did say to Dean she didn't want her children to be raised in the life. So maybe they would have lived a normal life, just not with her.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Until
he would have shipped him off to somebody else.
Yeah, until the whole Jessica Sam things happen, and then they would have been dragged back into it, but almost less prepared, kind of thing. So I think I'm being a bit unfair to Mary, but I definitely think they still would have ended up as hunters, one way or another. It's destiny, man.
Destiny. So they make a deal. His part of the deal is that in 10 years he'll come back for a little something, and that's it. And he says, as long as I'm not interrupted, nobody gets hurt. Which obviously that's what they're basically building up to, as to how do we connect this to Mary being killed by him, outside of him just being a vengeful person or vengeful demon. It was basically being very, which doesn't really make sense, but it is basically being very impersonal about it.
Yeah.
Which doesn't really make sense as to why he would then kill Jessica in the same way, but okay.
Who's just messing with Sam at that point to drag him back into his hunter lifestyle. Because of the whole Lucifer thing. Jessica makes more sense once she realised where this was going.
Yeah, Sam had to be on this path, otherwise there's no Lucifer.
Yeah, right, exactly.
They basically agreed to make the deal, and as Dean approaches, they're sealing it with a kiss. No, don't really like that one. John comes back to life, and Dean has failed.
So Dean does try to shoot the yellow-eyed demon before he smokes out again.
So I guess the bullet.
So the bullet count is fine.
Yeah.
He didn't fire the gun this whole episode, right?
I swear he did, though.
Maybe he did fire it in the house. I think he did, because he said he missed. He didn't say that he didn't shoot him. Yeah, okay, going with it. Fine.
So Castiel appears and places his hand on Dean's shoulder, and Dean is gone.
Oh, no, he doesn't. Look, Annabelle, you can't. This moment to me is very precious. It's very precious.
Is it a reassuring hand on the shoulder, or is it you've learned the story and now we must go back?
I read it as a reassuring hand on the shoulder, because just the way, Cass appears slightly behind him, and he puts his hand on Dean's shoulder, and Dean looks at him with tears in his eyes because he's just watched his basically his parents seal their fate.
Mm-hmm.
It's an awful moment. And yeah, there is a beat where they look at each other for a second. And I just feel like the veneer of soldier just drops slightly for Cass before he teleports him back. I just felt it in my heart, okay?
Which, I mean, it is very much like you said, he's just watched them seal their fate, and he's basically watched them die.
Yeah.
Right? And Cass knows what that's like to, witness his brethren get killed.
Yeah.
We already see how his anger comes when, in the last episode, where there's the implication that the angels are not doing anything and just like letting these seals be broken and all this and the other, and he had anger over it.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like Cass feels pity for Dean in that moment. It's maybe not. I don't know. It might not be any deeper than that. It's just I feel like he was trying to almost reassure him in a weird kind of gesture.
So you're basically reading way too much into it.
I'm basically reading way too much into it.
Or the appropriate amount.
Look, I'm just telling you what I saw on the screen. We come back to the motel where we started this episode. Dean is asleep, but he wakes up very suddenly, and Castiel is standing at the foot of his bed.
I couldn't stop any of it. She still made the deal. She still died in the nursery, didn't she?
Don't be too hard on yourself. You couldn't have stopped it.
And Dean's basically sits up and is pretty distraught. Like, I didn't change anything. She still made that deal. She still dies. I mean, it's obvious because he's still in the exact same place that he started from. So, of course, he didn't change anything. Castiel says, don't be too hard on yourself. You couldn't have stopped it. So Dean's like, what do you mean? And Castiel says here, destiny can't be changed, Dean. All roads lead to the same destination. I can't tell you how much that hurt my heart.
Do you think this is the beginning of what? I always say this is the beginning, but maybe more foundation for the hatred of destiny that Dean has, the hatred for fate that Dean has, because Castiel just told him straight up that like this was always going to happen. I put you through this mental torture, and it was always going to happen. Like,
see, I think Dean already hates destiny. He's said it multiple times about being a hunter, about dying bloody, about all the things that he thinks are gonna happen to him, about the fact that he can't escape his fate as a hunter. I think Dean already hates the fact that he feels like he doesn't have any free will in his life. I think this is more the other way around. I think this is starting to be the foundation for Cass of like hating the fact that destiny exists, because he's just had to watch. I think through all of this, Cass was watching everything that was going on. Like, in my head, I think because he appears at random moments, and also is ready there to take him back at the exact moment as too. So I think he was watching all of this. And I think seeing that the emotional turmoil that Dean had to go through, basically watching fate play out, and then having to tell him that it was always going to be this way and it couldn't ever be changed. It's almost, it's cruel to have to make him watch all of that and be an active participant in it and then not being able to change anything. And there's a few interactions throughout season 4 where you start to see it. This isn't necessarily one of them, but it's like a starting point where Cass starts questioning why he's doing these things and why he's having to like basically drive events into this, presumably like there's no way out of it. Because Dean even asked her like, why did you send me back? And Cass says here that it was for the truth. Now that you know everything that we do. So they're sharing information with Dean because they want to stop whatever Sam's doing. And Cass very much uses the we as angels. He's kind of taking himself out of the fact that he did this to Dean because it was horrible.
Yeah.
And at this point points out that, Dean realized that Sam's not there. Castiel says, like, we know what Azazel did to your brother. What we don't know is why. What his end game is. He went to great lengths to cover that up. Cass tells Dean where Sam is, and he grabs his jacket to go find him. And the last line of this episode is Castiel saying,
your brother is headed down a dangerous road, Dean, and we're not sure where it leads. So stop it, or we will.
calling back to the beginning of the episode, saying that he has to stop whatever is happening.
Mm-hmm.
So, I just want to talk for a minute about Castiel's motivations in this episode, because we know for a fact that at this point in the season he's still following like Heaven's orders, like to the letter, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
He hasn't been told to kill Dean yet. And so he's clearly been told to show him this.
Mm-hmm.
But like, to what end? I don't know why Dean had to see that this was always going to happen, that like his parents were always going to die, and that the deal was always going to happen. I don't think it would make him like hate Sam at all, or have any animosity towards him in order to stop him.
If anything, it brings sympathy more, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like, well, no. So it brings sympathy to the fact that Sam has psychic powers.
Yeah.
Because he was never really that accepting of them throughout season 1 and 2. Like, he was, referred to him as a freak, and like, even though he didn't believe he was a bad person, like he didn't like these demonic powers.
Yeah.
But now he knows that it was never Sam's fault. I mean, it was never Sam's fault anyway. But like, when you have that reassurance that it was like a demon's plan all along for this to happen,
and that it's completely unavoidable. This was always going to happen to Sam, and he's just as stuck in whatever fate has in store for him as Dean is at this point.
But then it also leads to, with Sam not seeing the events, it doesn't allow him to evaluate the choices he's making.
Yeah.
So I think it almost plants a seed of like, in Dean's mind, that is playing into the demon's hands, and like, you should be okay with like ending it.
You're right. Like, Sam, because he hasn't seen this happen, doesn't fully appreciate the sacrifice his family made, kind of. So like, you're right, he's kind of squandering his chance where maybe he could be going on like a straight and narrow path kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's a stupid one, because like, Dean doesn't fully understand what's going on yet, but I guess it makes sense when he finds out later on. Also, I wonder if this was just supposed to be like a fact-finding mission, and that they were hoping that Dean would find out what Azazel's plan was, like specifically his plan, by going back in time and finding out when that deal was made, if he had revealed something. But, being Heaven and them being dicks, they didn't really consider the emotional implication of making him watch his mother have to make that deal and basically, seal her and fate her death in 10 years' time.
Yeah. I agree with you that Cass was there the entire time, but the conversation that that Dean has with Yellow Eyes, like, because they know that this is what's happened, so they know that this conversation has to happen between them alone, because I'm pretty sure Azazel probably would have been able to see that there was an angel in the room.
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Or is it just when the demon is not in a vessel, they're not limited by human sight?
I have no idea, because I think sometimes, I think there's even been times when they don't recognise angels who are in vessels, like they suddenly like are real themselves, so I'm not sure about that one. Going back to Cass, I wonder if, just talking like the whole free will thing, whether or not this was a fact-finding mission and he was told that this is why we're doing this, we're going to send him back in time to go find this information, and then I personally think that seeing the effect that has on Dean, and not like that Heaven hadn't fully realised the implications of what they were doing to him, like emotionally, having to watch this, does change something slightly. I think the don't be too hard on yourself line is kind of telling of that. Because he does try to reassure him that he could never have done anything. I don't know. I am reading too much into it.
Yeah. I don't know though, because you're right. Like, Castiel also wants Dean on their side. He has to say something in like he has to say something that will bring understanding as to their viewpoint.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I don't know. He doesn't have to though, because by being an angel, and he does say that like in the last episode, like, he kind of just expects obedience, you know?
Yeah,
the whole,
that's
like, I
true.
dragged you out of hell, I can throw you
I
back
could send
in
you back
line.
in, yeah.
I don't know. I love Cass. I like watching him become more human. I'm trying to see it now when it's way too early, but I love it anyway.
Definitely.
So what overall did we think of this episode then? I mean, I personally think it was a lot of lore building that, like, I knew happened, but, like, kind of doesn't make sense when you start to actually think about it, but fine. Time travel episodes always mess the timeline up. It just does.
Yeah. That was definitely, like, I think I personally just don't have that much invested interest in the backstory of Mary and John. Especially with, you know, the prospect of this prequel coming out. For me, it was very much like information gathering. I think I even said it last time. I was like, do your homework. Like, there'll be a test.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that they all failed, to be honest. But I don't know. It was okay, I guess. Like you said, time travel episodes are always a bit wonky. They were never going to be perfect, which is fine. Like, I wasn't expecting that. But it's just, I just wasn't that interested in it. There wasn't, and I think it's because we're so used to that story now.
Yeah.
That it's just there's nothing you can really gain apart from pointing out the mistakes in a rewatch.
That's a good point. Yeah, you're right. It's not new information, so you can only pick it apart. Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah. Because
everything that we pointed out has just been, like, major plot point flaws.
That's true. It hasn't been anything really to do with the episode. It's been all stuff that's happening in the future or happened in the past. We didn't actually talk much about the actual episode here.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And it ends on a to be continued.
Yeah, there's no reason for it to be on a to be continued other than, oh no, where's Sam? Like, and maybe that's why. It's not actually a two-parter though, so who knows?
Or, I mean, maybe it's like one of those lame two-parters that's like, it gets resolved in the next, like, the first 10 minutes of the next episode.
Are they just hinting at the fact, like, we're going to have a continuous storyline this time, guys? Like, no, maybe Monster of the Week is going out the window slightly, which it kind of does a little bit in this season.
But not that much.
Not that much. I mean, there's 20-odd episodes, so...
Yeah.
So what is the next episode, Annabelle?
So the next one is Metamorphosis.
Hey, I don't remember this episode. I will once I watched it.
It's a Rougarou. And I don't know why that name is so familiar, but I feel like it's something that they bring up a lot.
They do bring up Rougarous a lot. You're right. It's just one of those monsters that they constantly refer to like vampires. Like, I don't know. They just do. Oh, you're right then. It's going to get resolved in the first 10 minutes of the episode and it's going to be a Monster of the Week episode. What was I thinking? What was I actually thinking? That it was going to be a fully plot-heavy episode like this one? Again? Nah, impossible.
Impossible.
Okay, fine. So at the end of the episode, I'd like to say thank you to the Pixel Agora and his wonderful art for our podcast. It's on Redbubble if you'd like to order as a sticker or a postcard or a phone case. That'd be kind of cool. I'd like to see a wild phone case of our podcast art. A portion of the profits go back to the Pixel Agora. So, yeah, help us support our artist. If you would like to talk to us about anything in this episode or about time travel generally, you can find us on all the social media platforms, so Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, at Escaping Purgatory Podcast or just Escaping Podcast. So come have a chat.
So this week, we had a little bit of a stumble. Like, we didn't really go anywhere. We kind of went backwards in time to see where we had come from. So but hopefully next week we can continue on our path, because we literally like popped in and out of our exact space and time, and hopefully we can escape next week.
Bye.
Bye.